And welcome to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business. Today, I'm very excited to speak to fellow podcast and radio show host Poirier. He's also a multiple-time TEDx speaker and accomplished author, and he has interviewed thousands upon thousands of successful entrepreneurs as well. So, Corey, welcome into the program today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Really excited to be here.
And, I've been watching some of your videos. You're an amazing speaker and a presenter. And I want you to share the story of your first time, on stage, trying to tell some jokes. I think this is a good story.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. So I guess it was back in 2002. I had a stage play in a fringe festival. And what happened was, I was asked by one of the actors if I wanted to try my hand in stand-up comedy. And the number one fear in the world, as people know, most people know, is speaking and public speaking, and that's above death, they say. So what that means, according to Jerry Seinfeld, is that you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy if you were at a funeral.
One of my favorite lines by Seinfeld as well.
Yeah, I love that one. And so what's really surprising and cool about that is that I had this opportunity, like I say, to perform stand-up. And it was, do you try this? Do you give this a go? And what happened was, for me, is that I was invited to this comedy club. We had done 2 weeks in this workshop where we were basically taught simply how to adjust the mic stand. And that, in this case, that Dane Cook ruled. and where that came in is the guy who invited us to the show was a fan of Dane Cook. So he basically just said, this comic is awesome, and here's why, and here's how you adjust a mic stand. And so that's not really a lot of training for one of the number one fears in the world.
Right.
And so what happened was I was invited, like I say, to the workshop. I took the workshop. Then I was invited to this comedy club. The plan was we were going to watch people entertain us. So this was like week 3 of this workshop. And this was where the rubber hits the road, because we were going to watch other comics, study them, learn from them. And what we found out at 5 minutes to showtime is that we were those comics. We were those entertainers. Right. We had no notice, no material. Basically, it's just, here you go, you're on the stage in 5 minutes. And so I went to the bathroom to look for the exit window, and there was none in the bathroom. And when I came back out of the 15 that had attended the workshop and paid for the workshop, 8 were gone. They had walked out the front door. So here's a case where 50% of the people, over 50%, who thought they were going to perform stand-up comedy, who planned to perform stand-up comedy, who paid to learn how to do it, left. So that should give people a feeling for how high of a fear ratio this is. But what happened is now it's about 10 minutes after 8, and we're still all debating who's going to go up first. So I had attended one Toastmasters session in my life. And the one thing I learned is that if you're going to face a fear, or you're going to speak, or whatever it might be, you go up first, rather than watching everybody go up before you and sweating it out. And so I essentially, while they were still talking, they didn't even notice me on the side. I jumped on the stage, told what I thought might be the best joke that I'll ever tell in my life, to dead silence. And so what happened was I started to realize quickly the stand-up comedy thing was a lot tougher than I thought. The streams of sweat are starting to roll down my face. But I figured I'm already there. I'm already in. So I jumped into the second joke, told it, thought maybe this one would be the deal breaker, and it wasn't. It bombed again. And so now I jokingly said that if you've ever watched Simpson and seen tumbleweeds on The Simpsons, I think one went by the stage. I said if there was a cricket in the audience, I heard the cricket at the back. Like, it was bad, is all I'm saying. I was a mess. I bombed. And then what happened was finally Guy, this person that sort of got us into this mess, the person that put on the workshop, called me over to the corner of the stage, and he smucked me in the back of the head, and he said, "You idiot, we haven't even turned the mic on yet."
I love that story. So after they turned the mic on, how did the night go?
Not much better.
Not much better. Well, at least, they heard you at that point and everything. So, but, I did stand-up comedy myself, just amateur, about 60, 70 times, about 10, 12 years ago. But, I had never even been on stage to speak before. That was my entry point into, speaking. I don't really consider myself a speaker. I do a lot of radio shows and podcasting, and I've done some speaking and everything. But ever since I did that, I don't fear anything. It's like, Jamie, go speak about this. I'll jump right up on the stage, Tell me about what, that does to somebody as a speaker once they've stood in front of people and try to make them laugh and they don't laugh.
Well, and similar to what you just said, Jamie, myself as well, I had only spoken, I think, once before I jumped on that stage that night. So I wasn't a speaker by any stretch at that point. I had spoken once, and I don't remember what I said. I delivered this talk, and it was for young entrepreneurs. And afterward, people approached me, and they were saying, "Oh, I really enjoyed that." And I said, "Oh, what did you like about it?" Because I literally couldn't remember what I said, and I didn't plan it. Like, I just kind of said, "Oh, you just go up and talk about your story." And some of them said, "I don't really know what the central point was, but you were so passionate about saying it that I'm ready to take on the world." And so I thought there's something here, but at the same time, that tells you my comfort level, where I didn't even know what I said afterwards. Like, I just basically almost like blacked out on what I actually said. And so what happened was I this night of stand-up was really my first night on the stage trying to communicate with an audience. That stage play I mentioned, I had to write myself a part because somebody got injured. And so I basically wrote a part where I was walking onto the stage with my back to the audience. So I didn't face the audience on purpose, because that's how uncomfortable I was. I had played music in clubs for years before that, but I wouldn't talk between my sets, between my songs. And so stand-up changed all that, because then all of a sudden, after bombing a lot of nights in a row and starting to get slightly better, I was comfortable then talking on stage in the music side. And then what happened was I started to realize that I loved a lot about stand-up, but there were elements I didn't like. And then I kind of discovered this whole world of public speaking and realized there were the elements I didn't like about stand-up were actually not really in the speaking world. And the elements I loved about stand-up were in the speaking world. So it was like the best of all worlds. And that's how I transitioned into speaking. Once I realized that it was possible, and I also thankfully had a business career at the same time, so the transition wasn't as hard as somebody who's just literally going from nothing to trying to come up with a topic. But that was the transition. It was basically, I spent this time in stand-up. As you said, it helped me conquer a major fear. I learned more about communicating with an audience in stand-up than I have in anything I've ever done since. And it made the transition to speaking that much easier than I'm sure if I would have tried to take the step from business world to speaking without stand-up in the middle. So,
and today you have interviewed thousands, I think, like you said, like 4,000 different professionals, radio show host, multiple-time TEDx speaker. So how did the world of public speaking and radio show hosting and all this open up for you? Talk to me about how you got in there.
So after I decided that I want to transition from stand-up to speaking, and to clarify that as well, especially for somebody listening and saying, well, wait a minute, I thought you kept performing stand-up. So I did. I performed ultimately 700 shows. I was going to say 900, but 700 shows over 9 years. Get those backwards. But yeah, so 700 shows over 9 years. So that's, a lot of time on stage.
And that's an accomplishment. I only did like 60 or 70 before I had to say, all right, that's enough for me.
Well, 60 or 70 is still a lot in a year, right? I mean, I put you on target that you would have done roughly 700 in 10 years. Yeah. So we probably were averaging the same amount of shows per year. But I kept at it. I kept doing it. But the first year, I transitioned into speaking as well. So the comedy became the thing on the side that kept me sharp for my speaking. But in terms of how I made the transition or what that looked like, really, the thing that made it a bit easier for me is I was already when I say I was in business, I was in a sales role with Konica Minolta, so a large Global 1000 company. I was actually selling photocopiers door to door, not for the faint of heart, but I was doing that. And then, so what happened was I had certain clients that I recognized would be a good fit for my speaking side of things. And the company I was at didn't have any kind of policy that you couldn't talk to your clients about something after you've already sold them. So I approached a few clients that I thought would be good fits. And then I also approached one of my major clients, which was a community college. And I approached them and convinced them to let me put on a sales training program. And they had never done, like now there's sales programs at almost every college and university. But then there wasn't. And so I convinced them, ironically, I sold them. It took me a year to sell them on why they should put on a sales course, because they didn't see, they were like, who's going to take this course? Because no colleges were really putting them on yet. And once I convinced them, and once they let me put it on, they saw that it was extremely popular. But that helped me in a major way start, because now all of a sudden in the local area I was in, I had the prestige of being a college instructor. And then at the same time, like I said, I had approached some of my larger corporate clients, and I had a few of them bite. So all of a sudden now I was starting to build this kind of little client list, if you will, and starting to do some talks. And then I recognized that if I wanted to really take it to the next level, that I needed a lot of testimonials in a short amount of time. And I figured the way to do that would be to get in front of an audience that wasn't just the staff members of one company. It would be to get into an audience where there were multiple business owners. And that way, when I get testimonials, it would be from multiple business owners, even though it was only one talk. So what I did was I actually got into chambers and rotaries, so Rotary clubs and chambers of commerce. And essentially what I did was I got them, they brought me in and I had this evaluation form, and on it I said, can we use your comments in conjunction with our services as a testimonial? And they said yes. And so long story short, basically that's how I got a whole bunch of testimonials at one time and really took it to the next level.
And today you're a multiple time TEDx speaker, radio show host. How soon before you were able to make that career move outside of Conica Minolta and become a speaker?
So 2002 is when I launched the speaking part-time, and 2006 is when I launched it full-time.
So it was a 3 or 4 year growth period, and today you're in a very accomplished speaker, host, and we hear you all the time across speaking stages and TEDx. I want to get into you about that, how that program works. I'm curious about that myself. Also, your storytelling formula for entrepreneurs. We talked about that a lot on this program. That to be a great business person, you also got to have a great story behind whatever it is, the product or service that you're offering. So we'll talk about that when we come back from the break as well. Currently talking to, again, Corey Poirier. He is a multiple-time TEDx speaker, author, radio show host, has interviewed probably 4,000 different professionals. Learn more at thespeakingprogram.com. Again, thespeakingprogram.com. We'll be back in a moment. And welcome back to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business. So, Corey, the TEDx program, we've all heard of it. People get up there and speak. But how does this whole program work? Is this for entry-level people, mid-level, all types of people? How does this whole TEDx thing work?
So it varies, Jamie, depending on where. So TEDx, one of the things a lot of people don't necessarily know, there's the main TED conference, and then there's TEDx. And really, for the most part, they're both the same thing. But the difference is TEDx is kind of a brand name. It's almost like buying into franchises where you can offer them in your local city. And it's really the same thing, except for it's operated independently by independent, let's say, promoters, if you will. And so why that's significant is because in terms of how you go about getting a TEDx talk is going to differentiate, of course, depending on the organizer for that TEDx event. But really what it looks like, and to answer your question, it's for anybody. So, it's for anybody who really wants to get a powerful message out and thinks they have a powerful message they can share. But in terms of what it looks like, it really is this, okay, I'm going to say it's as hard as and as simple as, because it's hard to get one, but it's just the process is as simple as saying, I want to speak in this city at TEDx because it's close to my city, reaching out to them, going on their website, getting on their website and basically researching who they brought in previous years, what type of speakers they look for, if they have a theme list, at what the theme is. And then now, unlike my first talk, you couldn't nominate yourself then, but you can now. So you nominate yourself, you fill out the form, and really what you're trying to do is demonstrate to them why they need you to be the speaker at their event.
And so what is it, then you're one person is kind of over the area, like a franchise? Is that who you're reaching out to?
So it's not really one person. What it is it's usually a committee. So it's a committee, and you're basically sending off, like when you send it off, let's say through the website, you don't know which member of the committee is going to see it. You don't know who has the most pull. The organizers usually are 3 or 4 or 5 organizers, meaning it's not usually just one person.
Okay.
So that's the challenge. It's like if you were, as a speaker, if I was pitching to a committee of 10 people and I have to convince them all why they should hire me, well, that's what a TEDx looks like. So you'll see, and it's not abnormal to see 1,000 applications for 7 spots.
Is that what a typical TEDx event is? 7 spots, 7 speakers?
7 to 9 to 10, usually in that range.
And how long do they each get to speak? Is it all the same allotted time?
Typically speaking, less than 15 minutes. The most I've seen is less than 18 minutes. But basically, it's less than a 20-minute talk. And everybody, in other words, they say you have to be under this amount of time, but one person could be 7 minutes and one person could be 12.
Interesting. Just something I'd like to. I've never attended a TEDx talk, but I've watched a lot of them on YouTube, and something I'm myself am interested in. So I appreciate the information. Now, your website, The Speaking Program, is you have a speaking program. And you also talk about the storytelling formula that entrepreneurs need to have to be successful. Elaborate a little bit for me on your program.
So the formula for speakers, I mean, what I'll do is, I'll talk, Jamie, about the formula for storytelling, and then I'll maybe segue into the program as to, what it is and why we launched it. But the formula for storytelling, it's very, I'm going to say it's very simple or basic, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do. So here's the key components that need to be there. After I've done, as you mentioned, over 4,000 interviews and shared, therefore, over 4,000 stories. And why does one work so well as a signature story, and why does one story struggle, if you will?
Right.
So, what we've noticed that are the sort of common elements of the stories that work. First of all, they all have a hero and a victim, or hero, I should say, and a victim and a villain. So a hero, victim, and a villain. So when I say that, the key thing that people sometimes forget is that the hero doesn't have to be a person. So they all have, you'll notice all good stories have the element of a hero, something or somebody you can root for. But like I said, it doesn't have to be a person. It can be, for example, if you're doing a talk on, let's say, mental illness. So the hero could be how you're battling mental illness. Maybe it's the diet you have, maybe it's the way you're eating, the exercise you're doing. And of course, the villain in that case might be, in this case, might be mental illness. And then, of course, the victim would be the person that's suffering from it. So if you watch any good movie, any good TV show, there's always a hero and a villain. Those are the two main components that have to be there. If you think about Shakespeare's plays from how many years ago, they all had a hero and a villain. Right. So the point is, as people, psychologically, we get pulled into the story more if there's both of those. One they can root for and one they can boo against or throw rocks at. I've heard that term before, throw rocks at the villains. So that's the first thing that needs to be in your story. You need to have a really strong hero, a really strong villain, and then ideally, if the story calls for it, a victim is that third component. And then the other parts that need to be, or I shouldn't say need to be in it, but you'll remember this from stand-up, Jamie. One thing that really is proven to work well is 3 points. So in your story, you should have 3 major points, and that could be shorter or longer depending on how long of a time you get to tell the story.
Right.
The other side to that, though, is if you think about like act plays, there's 3 acts in an act play. There's 3, even in a movie that you're watching, there's 3 acts to it, even though if you don't notice that. So it's the same, there should be 3 acts, so I'll call them points in your story when you're speaking. And so that's something that I learned from stand-up. But I really believe it works in every walk of life because we're all so busy. We barely have time to remember 3, let alone people that come to a talk and say, here, just go. And then they basically just launch into it. And in 45 minutes, they've left you with 17 points. What are the odds you're going to remember? In fact, you'll probably remember less than 3 because you were so overwhelmed that if you just had 3, where you'd probably remember all 3.
Right. And develop them versus hitting with a bunch of vague points. Right.
Yeah, so you got to keep it to a certain number of points, and 3 seems to be the sort of that magic number. And then if I talk about sort of that last element of storytelling, because there's more than this, but this is sort of the formula that I discovered, is the listener, so the audience member, the listener, whoever it might be, you have to find a way to share that story that engages them, that emotionally connects with them, that makes them laugh or cry, so pulls them in. So it should be a story that either pulls on their heartstrings or makes them get mad, or it basically emotionally connects with them. And just to tell you in 1 minute, let's say a story as an example, it can be such a simple story because sometimes as speakers, I think we think it has to be this grandiose big story to work. But as an example, I was at Jimi Hendrix's gravesite last year. And while we were there were like 5 people that went to visit the gravesite. We were there an hour. And so one of the things to take away from that is 45 years ago, the gentleman passed, and he's still impacting people 45 years later to the level where not 1 hour goes by without people at his gravesite. But during that time, this guy pulls up in a little red car, jumps out of his car with gloves on his hands, walks around and cleans Jimi Hendrix's gravesite, and then jumps back in the car and drives off. Seems like such a small thing, but the bottom line is I've worked that into my talk on invisible impacts. And that's become a really signature story. And like I say, anybody else might see that and not even realize what happened there. But here, this guy is impacted by Hendrix, over 45 years ago, probably lives near the gravesite and goes there either every day or every week for sure, cleans his gravesite and doesn't tell a soul and moves on. And
wow.
So that's, to me, that's a story that you can, as a speaker, you can observe stories like that every day. And as long as you can spin it, and, you know, without me going into detail, because I know we don't have time, Jamie, but you can see probably all the elements I said, the hero and the villain, and, you know, and all that stuff, the 3 points, all those kind of things in that story. You can see how you can make that story fit into that mold.
Absolutely. Now, your program, we got a couple minutes left, and you also have a book. Go ahead and tell us about that in our closing minutes.
Yeah, so the program is essentially, I wanted to put something together to help impact tomorrow's speaking leaders. And so we put together a program to teach people essentially what it took me 15 years to learn in falling in trenches in months. You know, so the idea is, if I've fallen down those manholes and I can say, here's where the manholes are, there's where the trenches I spent time in are, why should you have to fall down the same one? So basically the idea is to teach you the speaking industry inside and out, from the first talk you ever do all the way to now you're a paid speaker on the circuit speaking on a daily basis or a weekly basis.
And that's at thespeakingprogram.com.
Yeah, thespeakingprogram.com. People can check it out there. Then the secondary part you mentioned about is the book. And so we put out a book called Why. And the idea is to teach you, help you find your why, and then teach you how to leverage that why and how to use that why. So this could be, people might recognize this as why or passion or your purpose, whatever that word is, or your calling, to teach people that. That's the premise of the book, how to find it, how to leverage it. And the book is basically, the core book is the why book, all those, you know, all the stuff related to how to find your why. And the secondary part is a bonus section with 150 roughly quotes by thought leaders we've interviewed. So the book is close to 200 pages. And what's really cool is right now for the short term, we're actually offering it for free. So people can get the book at thebookofwhy.com, and when it asks for a code, you just use the word why, lowercase, and the free book will be pretty much on its way to you.
Thebookofwhy.com, and a free offer right now from Corey Poirier. So Corey, got a couple of minutes left. You've interviewed a lot of different professionals. What are some of the traits that you have seen inside these different professionals and influencers as common?
So very quickly, the 3 key traits that I've noticed is one, I guess, they know how to go all in. So whereas a lot of people get stuck in their phones, and I've jokingly said you see people walk into garbage cans because they're on their phone and they don't even notice it's in front of them. These high achievers, they don't get distracted like that. They go all in with the phone, so that then they can go all in with the person later, or they go all in with the person so they can go all in with the phone later. So they focus. They're extremely focused. The second one I would share is they're lifelong learners. So they understand the importance of feeding their mind on a regular basis and never think that the learning's done. And then the key one is they found their why. So they live with passion, they live on purpose, they live their calling, and that basically fuels everything they do. Very good discussion. You're also a radio show host. Where can people find your show? The easiest way is thepassioncure.com. Thepassioncure.com. People can pick these up or listen to that. Again, you've interviewed like 4,000 different professionals, so definitely check that out if you're a fan of entrepreneurial interviews, such as myself as well. So Corey Poirier, thank you so much for being with me on the program today. Thank you, Jamie. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And also learn more about his program at thespeakingprogram.com. New episodes of our program each morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at thatbusinessnetwork.com. And find us all across social media and connect with us and leave a review. It helps the program grow. So you've been listening to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business.